right. Hebrews 11:29. He says, by faith, he's talking about the children of Israel, passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, which the Egyptians, essaying to do, were drowned. So the Egyptians said, if anything Israel can do, we can do better. God said, you want to bet? Let's see how that works. And down they went. The account's given in Exodus 14. Exodus 14. And we'll start it in 13. Exodus 14, 13. Now my print's so big I can't read it. That's an unusual problem. And Moses said unto the people, fear ye not, stand still, and no, I'm on the wrong verse. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will show to you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, ye shall see them again no more forever. Well, not exactly, but close, pretty close. You won't see them in a sense of you needing to fear them anymore. They're no longer going to be your foes. They're going to be defeated. They'll see them washed up on shore, or bits and pieces of them, and they'll see them again at the judgment of the dead. There they'll show up again. Verse 14. And the Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace. And the Lord said unto Moses, verse 15, the Lord said unto Moses, wherefore criest thou unto me? Because the people have been mad. They've been saying, you let us out here to die. Now we're trapped. We should have never left. And, we had things worked out. Now you messed it all up. And Moses is trying to ease the people and tell them to depend on God. And what he says is, don't worry about it. God's got it. You won't see them again. And then he goes and prays about it. He kind of got that in reverse. You pray first. And then, so now the Lord tells him, why are you talking to me? Speak to the children of Israel. If they do what? Go forward. What did Moses say? Stand still. Just the opposite of what God said. We can't presume to know God's mind. I mean, unless you've got a verse on it and you're sure that's what God intends, look at it in verse 13. Fear ye not, stand still. God says, tell the people to move forward. Direct opposite. So he should have prayed first. That's normal. That's just human nature to say, well, God's going to take care of you. But we don't know what God's going to do. Job's friends learned that pretty fast. Verse 16. But lift up thou thy rod and stretch out thine hand over the sea and divide it. Oh yeah, I've done that a bunch of times. The children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. Now you see there's a bunch of missing elements in all of this. Now I kind of supplied some of them. But God doesn't give all of the answers. It requires faith. Faith is you're saying that God has your best in mind and he knows what's going on. And you don't have the answers. And with what little bit you do, you're going to hold on to and press ahead. Moses has never lifted, that I'm aware of, has lifted his rod and seen the water part and dry ground appear. But God acts like it's just no big deal. God's seeing it backwards. He's seeing it as it's already happened. So to him, it's no big deal. To Moses, it is. And so, yes, it does require some faith, a lot of faith. Furthermore, you got your enemy breathing down your neck. I mean, it's you're the reason for most of them's firstborns just dying. In addition to you just took all their valuables. They went door to door saying, give me all the goodies you got. And the people said, we'd be glad to if you're leaving. Don't come back. And they did. But now they're in a little problem. Looks like they've hit the dead end. And this is God saying, I'm going to give you a plan. Here's what you're going to do. And they had to do it by faith. All right, let's see. Now I'm doing a little new system here tonight because
I don't get you off track.
Mm-hmm.
Morning I've got signs everything.
It's 3, yeah.
All right. So yesterday, this popped out at me With him which divided the Red
Yes.
Sea into parts,
Uh-huh.
for his mercy endureth forever, and made it for his mercy endureth forever, but overthrew Pharaoh and his Red Sea for his
Mm-hmm.
hard process.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got that one in here. 136, 13 to 15. Yep. Yep, that's good. Look at it in chapter 15, Exodus 15. Exodus 15. And been having trouble getting the right monitor up here. So Exodus 15, and we'll be in we'll start in verse 1. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song unto the Lord, and spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, for he hath triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider hath he thrown into the sea. I think God was actually taking pleasure in destroying Pharaoh and his army. This is the enemy of God, and he's given him one chance after the next, and slowly letting out worse and worse plagues and destruction on him. Verse 2, the Lord is my strength and song, and is become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare him a habitation, my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. So Pharaoh didn't really know what war was until he showed up here. When the real man of war showed up, there was no contest. God was doing things that he had never imagined. Now, Pharaoh should have, maybe he didn't see it, but he should have been a little scared when he saw Moses raise his rod. He's seen that much before. Every time that rod went up, something else went down. And when Moses raises that rod and leaves it up all night, he should have known he was signing his death warrant right there. This is the children of Israel. They're leaving, and they've been in Israel, or they've been in Egypt there for a long time. During this time, they've been under harsh labor. They've been in basically slaves to do whatever manual labor that the Egyptians did not want to do. And by doing that, God has built these people into strong military force. Their armies is how he's going to refer to them. And an army has to be a bunch of yes men who will obey commands and move when they're told to. And this is what he's expecting. Now, once they get out and there's no Pharaoh breathing down their neck, they're not quite as, they don't remember how to obey commands quite as well. Nehemiah 9. Nehemiah 9, verse 11. Thou didst divide the sea before them, so that they went through the midst of the sea on dry land. And their persecutors thou threwest into the depths as a stone into the mighty waters. Now, you notice where they went. The depths. I know everybody's going to tell you that that means the Red Sea. But the Red Sea wasn't real deep right there because the children of Israel could walk across it. They've got it now on National Geographic did a special on it. You can find there's a land bridge right there where they were sunk. So these deeps are a little deeper than what the Red Sea is. Look at it in Genesis 1. Genesis 1, 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Now that's water above your head. And that's where a person goes when they die. They go to the deep. For us, we go through it just like Israel did. They went through the deeps. And there was a path made, and it was a dry land that they walked across. So it will be for us. God will open a way for us to leave. But when a lost soul dies, he goes into the deep that's above your head. And then God does just what he did with them, throws them down as a stone, and they'll sink from there all the way to hell. Look at it in Psalm 66. Psalm 66, verse 6. That doesn't say something. Psalm 66, 6. He turned the sea into dry land. They went through the flood on foot. There did we rejoice in him. That's good. And we should do that, and I think that nobody has a problem with that. When he's delivering us, we do rejoice, and we should rejoice, and that's what he expects. It's when you get to the other side what happens. That's the difficult part. Psalm 78, verse 13. Psalm 78, verse 13. I got it. 78:13. He divided the sea and caused them to pass through, and he made the waters to stand up as an heap. This is obviously not what people want to say. They want, I don't know, I guess they want everything to be natural, not supernatural. They try to say that the children of Israel crossed through the Sea of Reeds, which is north in a marshy, boggy area that they could walk across. And there was no miracle needed. Well, then how did all the army of Pharaoh get drowned in the little marsh? Well, obviously, it was a big heap, he says right here, of waters that God stood up like a wall. We don't see it in America, but most of the country is familiar with tsunamis. And that's what happens in a tsunami. The tectonic plates move, and when that happens, it sends out a wall of water, sometimes up to, I've seen them, a 15-story building size. And that comes crashing down, and you know it. Most people die in those type of things. And that's some of what's going on here. Look at it in Psalm 78. Psalm 78, verse 13. Or no, that's where we just were, wasn't it? Look at it in Psalm 106. Psalm 106, verse 9. He rebuked the Red Sea also, and it was dried up. So he led them through the depth, as through the wilderness. Now that's a weird comparison. The deep there is a comparison to the wilderness. You know, the wilderness was not only just God training them, but it was the devil tempting them as well. Verse 10. And he saved them from the hand of him that hated them, and redeemed them from the hand of the enemy. I don't want to get too deep in this, but what you have here is a picture of us leaving. We're the redeemed as well. You're the redeemed of the Lord. And one day you're leaving, and you're going through a body of water to enter heaven. And when you do, this whole thing is going to replay. And as it does, all the details are going to match, but I don't have time to give you all the info on it. So just think about that. You can work on it. Psalm 114. Psalm 114. He says, when Israel went out of Egypt, the house of Jacob from the people of from a people of strange language. This was what Israel was not Egyptian. You know, there weren't any Egyptians. The people there are just like they are now. They're Bedouins. They just transfer in and move around, and there's no real hometown people. You know what happens to this years later? Herod comes in as king of Egypt, and they crown him king. This is whoever's the strongest takes the position. That's why it was so scary for the Egyptians when Joseph comes in, is made second ruler in the land. Because it looks like now these outsiders who have moved in are going to take over. They just didn't know that God didn't like their nasty little land. Verse 3. The sea saw it and fled. Jordan was driven back. So that'll be our next verse in Hebrews 11. Verse 4. The mountains skipped like rams, and the little hills like lambs. So there's a lot more going on than just water moving. Some wild stuff going on there. Now a verse that we find in Isaiah, but here it's given another place. What ailed thee, O thou sea, that thou fleddest? Thou Jordan, that thou wast driven back? Okay, the answer is implied, God. When God gets mad, it should trouble everybody. That's the problem in America, is Americans are shaking their fist in God's face and saying we can do what we want. And he's getting mad and he's doing certain things. And, when catastrophes hit, we should be ailing. We should say that hurt, not get more stubborn. Look at it in Psalm 114, verse 1. No, is that where I just was? Yes. Psalm 100, no, that's what you just read. Psalm 136, verse 13. To him which divided the Red Sea into parts, for his mercy endured forever. Depends on which point of view you're looking at. If you're an Egyptian, you don't think that's mercy. And made Israel to pass through the midst of it, for his mercy endured forever. Now, if you're an Israelite, you can take that right there to the bank. But overthrew Pharaoh and his host in the Red Sea, for his mercy endureth forever. God's got a particular point of view. Obvious from that, his point of view is not, I'm for all men, and I'm the father of all nations. Baloney. Right there, his point of view is Israel, and if you're against Israel, he's against you. That was the viewpoint he's taking right there. And his mercy was for Israel, not Egypt. Look at it in Isaiah 11. Isaiah 11, verse 15. Isaiah 11:15. And the Lord shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea. Now, what's the Red Sea? You know what the Red Sea is? It comes out in a branch, and it looks like two fingers up there. But it also looks like a tongue. Right here he says it's a tongue. It's a tongue of a serpent. That's the way a serpent's tongue looks. It's split. Comes out like that. So that's the type of tongue he's talking about. And with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and shall smite it in the seven streams, and make men go over dry shod. Now there you see what's going on in the spirit realm. And I think that spirit realm is actually physical as well. But God's mad and he shakes his fist and he says, I'm a man of war and I'm going to show you what war is. And he smacks that water, and when he does, it does something and makes that water just congeal and move up like walls. Verse 16. And there shall be an highway for the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, like as it was to Israel in the day that they came up from the land of Egypt. So God's going to do this again. And he says right here that he had made a highway there. God put a highway in there. I don't know when the highway showed up. Did he smack the highway into place as he was pulling the waters up in heaps? Or was it there all along? I don't know, but that'll be something we can have him rewind for us when we get to heaven. Isaiah 63. Isaiah 63:11. Then he remembered the days of old, Moses and his people, saying, where is he that brought them up out of the sea with the shepherd of his flock? Where is he that put his Holy Spirit within him? Now, I think that's a unique verse in the Old Testament. The Old Testament basically does not have the Holy Spirit indwelling anybody. In the Old Testament, what you find is the Holy Spirit comes on a person and leaves the person and comes back on them, not in them. That's how we're different, is the Holy Spirit is in you. This one here, he says, Moses was special. I put my Holy Spirit in him. So he's one of the exceptions in the Old Testament. Verse 12, that led them by the right hand of Moses with his glorious arm, dividing the waters before them to make himself an everlasting name. And he did. The heathen, the pagan, this news traveled fast. Even though they didn't have cell phones back then. Anything shocking like this traveled the globe quickly. And there's the trade routes that come right up through there. And so this news, when they get to Jericho, Jericho already knows all about it. God says, I did that on purpose. I made it a big display just because I want them to know my name. And that's the one that matters. Look at it in Exodus 6. Exodus 6. Exodus 6, verse 26. You think about this whole thing. Why did God wait so long to get them out of Egypt? Didn't he have done it 40 years prior? Instead of let Moses sit out there in the wilderness for 40 years? He could have done anything, but he didn't. He had other people he was working on. Exodus 6, verse 26. These are that Aaron and Moses, to whom the Lord said, bring out the children of Israel from the land of Egypt, according to their armies. That's it. I got some troops down there I've been training. Bring the troops out. Now, that'd be a one-off, and we could say it's just flowery speech, but the Bible doesn't do that. Exodus 7, verse 4. But Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that I may lay my hand upon Egypt, and bring forth mine armies, and my people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt, by great judgments. God says, that's an army. I'm proud of those boys. I'm going to bring them out, and I'm going to let them do some warfare. Now, the warfare they did was nothing. God did all the fighting. But he said, it doesn't matter. I'm going to, if you're a buck private or you're the 4-star general, it doesn't matter when you win the battle. The whole army won the battle. That's what God's given everybody credit that's in the army for the win, even though it was all him. Look at it in Exodus 12. Exodus 12, verse 17. And ye shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. For in this selfsame day I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall ye observe this day in your generation by an ordinance forever. So the Passover is an army celebration. It's an army memorial. That's the day the armies got let loose from Egypt. Pretty good deal. Look at it, verse 51. And it came to pass the selfsame day that the Lord did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. It seems like this is what happens. Why would he have had to get them all trained up as an armed force when they're not going to do any fighting? You find this the same thing with Gideon. All his soldiers have to go through these training rituals, and he chops them down and qualifies them, but they get out there and all they're going to do is hold a pitcher and shout. Why all the effort? This is the way God does it. Numbers chapter 1. Numbers 1, verse 3. From 20 years old and upward, all that are able to go forth to war in Israel, thou and Aaron shalt number them by their armies. They're already armies. They're able to go to war, therefore they are the army. Look at it at Numbers chapter 2. And on the east side, toward the rising of the sun, shall they of the standard of the camp of Judah pitch throughout their armies. Now he's laying out the camp. You can go through that chapter. It keeps happening for every division. He starts saying, he calls them an army over and over. Look at it in chapter 33. These are the journeys of the children of Israel, which went forth out of the land of Egypt with their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. He keeps repeating that they're an army over and over. And when God says something, we're supposed to pay attention. When he repeats it, he's trying to make an impression on us. And so I think that it's very important that we note those things. Soldiers are not known as wimps. And Christians should not be either. Although it's become that the world thinks Christians are wimps. Christians are not wimps. A lot of them have become wimps. A biblical Christian is not a wimp. Just tell a person, okay, if you think Christians are such a wimp, read the Bible through and get back to me. Most Christians can't even do that. Matthew 22. This is a parable Jesus has been giving. And verse 7. But when the king heard thereof, he was wroth, And he sent forth his armies, we've seen the armies, and destroyed those murderers, and burned up their city. Then said he to his servants, the wedding is ready, but they which are bidden are not worthy. So this is God, obviously, the man of war, and he has armies at his disposal. You know what happens after we go to heaven? We do a little, you can find it in Judges 5, we do a little rehearsal, army drill, and then we come back with him as armies. He's going to display the triumph of pure power like this world's never seen. Look at it in Hebrews 11, verse 34. This is the claims to fame to the people that were the saints of the Old Testament. He says, verse 34, quench the violence of fire, escape the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong. Out of weakness. That is, they were weak and God made them strong. Waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the alien. I guess God's got some borders. There's some illegal aliens. Now, there may be something to that. You find in Revelation that he says, you've found those that claim to be Jews and found them to be liars, and I'll make them of the synagogue of Satan. So there's coming a day where there's going to be aliens invade Israel and claim to be Jews, and they're not. That's going to be literal. Hebrews 11, verse 30. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they were compassed about 7 days. So now we've moved on. Moses obviously off the scene. God didn't say anything in that chapter about why Moses was taken out. Gracious of him. Now we've already gotten it. God doesn't hide any of the details from us. That was in the beginning of the book. And now he's just pointing to faith as being how we're supposed to pick up on faith. Here the faith is not the object. The walls didn't have any faith. Matter of fact, the people who built the walls didn't have any faith. You know who has faith? It's the people doing all the work. Now, marching around, just because they're not firing any weapons, marching around and holding their silence, for a Jew, that's major. Not to say something. That was a lot of work. And they had to do it day after day for a whole week. And then the final day, do it 7 times. Now, that's faith. But it's what God required. And God required something that was not normal. Supernatural. Sometimes God will ask you to do things in the physical realm that seem silly. That's okay. If he asks you to do it, that's all that matters. And you have faith in him. Joshua chapter 6. Now, I've shown you all these armies. Now they're going to come up, and they still don't get to be a traditional army. Joshua 6, verse 3. And ye shall compass the city, all ye men of war. Well, that's the armies, the big bad guys with all the weapons and, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days. That doesn't sound like anything you need an army for. But he says, I want the warriors out there doing it. Faith is a man of war just walking without fighting. That took some restraint. These are men of war. Those are their enemies. You think the people of Jericho are just applauding them or sitting there in awe of them? No, they're jeering them, probably throwing things at them. They've got to have some restraint. These are men who are made for fighting. He says, just want you to walk and close your mouth. See if you can do that. Those are hard things to do. Look at verse 4, Joshua 6, verse 4. And the 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns. And the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And you know the story. Now, this weapon's never been used by them anymore, or before. It'll be used in the future by Gideon. However, they didn't realize that was a weapon of mass destruction, but it was. And they're just going to, in faith, obey because that's what they were told to do. That's a hard thing to do. The one who made this work, obviously, is God. And he's the same one that made it work with Gideon. And he's the same one that makes it work in our day. That's how we fight. By and large, we can only fight with a trumpet. We're not allowed to fight with our hands and our fists. I mean, by and large. There can be some exceptions. 2 Corinthians 10. 2 Corinthians 10, verse 4. He says, "For the weapons of our warfare," so you're a soldier too, you're part of an army, "are not carnal, but mighty through God." He's kind of put a dig in on the carnal armies. All they've got are carnal weapons, and they're not really mighty. From God's point of view, human artillery is not mighty. His is. Mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. Now that's something that the carnal weapons couldn't do. 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5. "Casting down imaginations." Now you've never found a weapon that could do that. That requires the power of God. You'll have some imaginations pop in your head that you had no control over. You don't know where that thing came from. You know what you need? You need something more powerful than your little pea brain because you didn't have enough control to keep that thing from entering. You need a strong power. That's a weapon that's not carnal. "And every high thing that exalteth itself against the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity." Who brings somebody into captivity? A soldier, an army. "Every thought to the obedience of Christ." Look at Psalm 75. Psalm 75, verse 5. We've got a trumpet. Everybody has a trumpet, and women work their trumpet better than men. But so, Psalm 75, verse 5. After that comment, I might not have one after the night. Psalm 75, verse 5. "Lift not up your horn on high." Now he's going to explain to you what he's talking about. "Speak not with a stiff neck." So the horn is your voice. You blow air through the instrument God made in you, and he's calling it a horn. It's a wind instrument. A horn is a means of communication. When the children of Israel were to do certain things in the camp, horns would blow in certain sequences. And they knew when it did this, or when they were playing revelry, or when it was taps, they knew what it meant. And so the same with us. For us, we're to use our horn. Now, usually the way we're going to use our horn in our warfare is we're going to use it to call in reinforcements, to ask for instruction. We're going to do it to contact headquarters, not necessarily to contact other people, although maybe sometimes. Look at it in Ezekiel 9, verse 2. We've seen that horn being a means of communication, and now I'm just going to show you a coincidence. "Behold, 6 men came from the way of the higher gate, which lieth toward the north, and every man a slaughter weapon in his hand. And one man among them was clothed with linen, with a writer's," what kind of horn? Ink horn. That's another way of communication. This is a horn that doesn't make a sound. It puts words on a piece of paper. But it's a horn. It's an ink horn by his side. "And they went in and stood beside the brazen altar." Verse 3. "And the glory of the God of Israel was gone up from the cherubim whereupon he was to the threshold of the house. And he called the man clothed with linen, which had the writer's ink horn by his side." He keeps saying this ink horn business. Look down to verse 11. "And behold, the man clothed with linen, which had the ink horn by his side, reported the matter, saying, I have done as thou hast commanded me." This ink horn is going to give a message. Look down at verse 21. Ezekiel 29. Ezekiel 29, verse 21. Ezekiel 29, verse 21. In that day will I cause the horn of the house of Israel to bud forth, and I will give thee the opening of the mouth in the midst of them, and they shall know that I am the Lord. Now, usually people will tell you that the horn here is a reference to power, like a bull has horns, and that's an offensive weapon. I think he's told you right here what the horn is. He talks about opening of the mouth. Now, what's that mean? That means one day Israel will be the messenger to all other nations to carry God's message, just like they were intended to from the beginning and dropped the ball. One day they'll pick it back up, and God will give them the perfection that He intended from the start. And there it's a horn. All right, that's as far as we can go tonight. We'll pick up there next week at verse 31.